Ever feel like you're drowning, under the weight of what you should be? The crushing weight, man, I know it well. The ideal son, the perfect partner, the unstoppable achiever, all those shoulds, they're not leading to growth. They're a cage. A gilded cage maybe, but a cage nonetheless. Jung called it the shadow self, that hidden part whispering, begging for validation, not transformation. It's a desperate hunger, born from past rejections, from the fear of showing the world your cracks, your true, messy self. But what if I told you the path to real power? It starts with a brutal honesty, with embracing the incompleteness that scares you most. Are you ready to step out of the cage? It started with a tremor, a subtle crack in the carefully constructed facade. I was 42, living in Austin, a successful architect, the picture of stability, or so it seemed. The truth. I felt hollow, a meticulously crafted shell, a perfectly designed house with no one home. The pressure, the shoulds had become unbearable. I should be happier, more fulfilled. I should feel a deeper connection to my wife. I should be effortlessly climbing that corporate ladder. But the deeper I dug, the more the emptiness echoed. It wasn't just dissatisfaction, it was a profound sense of wrongness. A deep gnawing fear that I was a fraud, a charlatan, a man who had somehow gotten this whole life thing spectacularly, terrifyingly wrong. And honestly, I didn't want to see it either. It was easier to keep building, to keep adding onto that meticulously crafted facade, to keep pretending, to keep chasing more success, more validation. But the cage was closing in. The weight of those shoulds felt like a concrete slab pressing down on my chest, suffocating me slowly, relentlessly. It wasn't a yearning for genuine change. It was a desperate, panicked scramble for reassurance, proof that I was, in fact, okay, that I wasn't a complete failure. And that's when I began to understand the subtle cruelty of the validation trap. It's built on the ruins of authentic self. That hollow ache, it wasn't just a lack of fulfillment. It was a deeper sickness, a yearning for something else. Something beyond the gilded cage of my achievements, something validating. I was chasing growth, I thought. But the truth, a brutal, terrifying truth, was far more insidious. I wasn't seeking transformation. I was desperately seeking validation for staying exactly the same. For clinging to the persona I'd carefully constructed, the successful architect, the stable husband, the reliable friend. It was a desperate attempt to silence the whispers from the shadow self. Jung called it that, the part of ourselves we repress, the parts that make us feel unworthy, unacceptable, incomplete. And that's the crux, isn't it? The shadow isn't an enemy to be banished. It's a part of us that desperately craves acknowledgement, a desperate child howling in the dark. It's a hunger born of old wounds, past rejections, the fear of ever being truly seen. Think of it like this. You're a man stranded on a desert island, meticulously building a sandcastle, a perfect replica of a life you never truly lived, and desperately praying the tide won't come in. You're not building a raft, you're building a validation machine. You're hoping that if the castle is perfect enough, someone will see it and finally tell you, you are enough. But that's not growth. That's the pathetic clinging to a fantasy. I saw this in Marcus, a 60-year-old retired lawyer in Charleston, South Carolina. He'd spent his life chasing professional accolades, building this impressive career, but inside, he felt like a fraud, a man playing a role he'd outgrown. His success was a shield against the crippling fear of his own vulnerability, his own deep-seated insecurities. He'd convinced himself that more achievement would somehow fill the void, make him worthy, erase the whisperings of his shadow. But it didn't, it just made the cage smaller. The validation he sought wasn't a destination, it was a constant, exhausting chase, a hamster wheel spinning endlessly. His success was a carefully constructed prison, and the bars were made of his own anxieties. The validation he craved was a narcotic, a drug that never really satisfied. It only numbed the pain temporarily. The truth is, we often mistake validation for transformation because it offers a similar kind of emotional rush. It feels good to be seen, to be confirmed. But real transformation, that's a different beast entirely. That's about facing the tide, embracing the cracks in your perfectly built sandcastle, and realizing that maybe, just maybe, you don't need a castle at all. You just need to be you. That yearning, it wasn't just for more. It was a desperate hunger for confirmation, for proof that I was, in fact, the man I'd meticulously crafted myself to be. The successful architect, the devoted husband, the picture of it all. But the picture was a lie. A carefully constructed persona, a mask hiding the true, messy reality beneath. And that's the cruel irony of the validation trap, isn't it? We think we're chasing growth, but we're actually terrified of facing what's truly there. We're clinging to the familiar, to the image we've built, even as it suffocates us. Think of it like this. A ship sailing the ocean, constantly adjusting its course to stay within the safe, predictable currents. It's comfortable, predictable, and utterly unfulfilling. That's where the wounding comes in. It happens far earlier than we realize. Some deep rejection, some betrayal, some early failure shapes our internal blueprint of self-worth. Maybe it's a harsh father in Chicago, always demanding more. Maybe it's a college rejection in Boston that leaves a young man crippled by self-doubt. Or maybe it's something more subtle, a consistent pattern of feeling unseen, unheard, unrecognized. Jung called it the shadow self, that hidden part of us, full of our insecurities, our fears, and the unprocessed wounds from our past. And that hunger for validation, it's not about growth. It's the shadow's desperate cry for recognition, a desperate attempt to stitch up those gaping wounds, to prove to a harsh and unforgiving inner critic that we're worthy. We chase achievement, titles, and accomplishments, not because we actually want them, but because we believe they'll finally silence that nagging voice of self-doubt. They won't. They never do. I met a man in Denver once, 68 years old, retired surgeon, brilliant, accomplished, outwardly successful, but inwardly. He was a ghost, haunted by a past rejection from a woman he still loved, decades later. His entire life, the career, the wealth, the reputation, had become a magnificent monument to that pain, a frantic attempt to prove his worth, to overcome that early wound. He was seeking validation, not transformation. And that is the core of the trap. The validation trap, like a quicksand, never truly satisfies. Every achievement, every recognition, only reveals the hollowness at its core, a terrifying emptiness that screams, it's not enough, it's never enough. The deeper we dig into this emptiness, into that raw, aching place of unmet need, the more we see that true growth is not about building a bigger cage. It's about understanding the mechanisms of the cage itself. Understanding the wounds of the past, those primal fears and insecurities that fuel our desperate need for external confirmation. The next step is to confront those shadows head-on, to integrate them into the whole self, to embrace the mess, the cracks, the incompleteness, to finally be free. That yearning, that desperate hunger for confirmation, it's a trap. A subtle, insidious trap laid by the shadow self. It's not about growth, not really. It's about validation of the persona, that carefully constructed mask we wear to the world. Jung called it the persona, the face we present to society to protect the fragile ego beneath. And that ego, my friend, is terrified of exposure, of being seen for what it truly is, incomplete, flawed, vulnerable. Think about it, all those shoulds. They're not guiding principles, they're chains. Chains forged in the fires of past rejections, of unmet expectations, of the gnawing fear of inadequacy. We build this fortress, this persona, brick by brick to protect ourselves from that fear. But the more we build, the more trapped we become. The stronger the fortress, the more we're confined within the illusion of our own making. The trap, you see, is that the pursuit of validation only reinforces the persona, keeping the shadow self perpetually at bay. Take Mark, for example. A 60-year-old lawyer in Chicago, successful by any measure. He had it all, the corner office, the sprawling suburban home, the perfect wife and family. But the emptiness gnawed at him, like termites eating away at the foundation of his perfect life. He sought validation in his career, in material possessions, in the approval of others, all to silence that nagging voice of self-doubt. He wasn't striving for growth. He was desperately clinging to the illusion of his own success, a success built on sand. The mechanism, the unconscious process, is projection. We project our fears and insecurities onto the world, seeking confirmation that the persona is valid, that the carefully constructed self is real, that we're worthy. But this is a deeply flawed strategy. It's like trying to build a tower on quicksand. The higher it gets, the greater the chance of catastrophic collapse. It's not a matter of if it will fall, but when. The true self, the authentic self, is buried beneath layers of protective armor, whispering from the darkness for acknowledgement, not just confirmation of the existing structure. The journey is not about solidifying that persona, it's about dismantling it brick by painstaking brick. Because in the end, what good is a flawless facade if there's no one home? The real work, the real transformation, begins when we dare to acknowledge the cracks, to confront the shadow self with compassion, to integrate its darkness into the light. It's not about erasing the imperfections, it's about embracing them. It's about accepting the messy, incomplete truth of who we are, cracks, shadows, and all. Only then can we truly begin to live authentically and fully. Only then can we start building something not on sand, but on solid rock, the rock of self-acceptance. So what does this mean? What does it look like to build a life not on the shifting sands of external validation, but on the bedrock of self-acceptance. It means choosing vulnerability over perfection. It means showing up messy cracks and all. It means accepting the incompleteness that once terrified you and realizing it's not a flaw, but the very source of your unique power. It's a different kind of success, a quiet revolution. It's not about becoming someone else, some idealized version of what you should be. It's about becoming yourself. The you who's always been there, buried under layers of shoulds and fears and unmet expectations, and yet still beating, still whispering for release. You're not broken, you were never taught the truth. The truth is, the cage was never outside of you. It was inside, a self-imposed prison built from fear. This is the moment of choice. You can continue to feed the shadow self, that desperate hunger for external proof that you are enough. That insatiable craving for approval that ultimately leaves you empty, or you can turn toward the light. The light that's been there all along, obscured, dimmed, but never extinguished. The light of your own authentic self. It's not easy. There will be tremors, cracks, moments of doubt. But it's a path that leads not to a hollow victory, but to a deep, abiding peace. A peace that comes only from embracing your complete and utterly imperfect self. And that's okay, it's more than okay. That yearning, that ache, that desperate hunger, it's not a weakness. It's the raw, untamed power of a soul finally ready to break free. It's a hunger that